My best friend stole half of my little brother's cancer fund, then told CPS. We used it on a new TV. When I confronted her in the parking lot, she slapped me and said, "Do you know how much work I put into this?" I didn't say a word. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, she was screaming outside my window while the police dragged her away in handcuffs. My 5-year-old brother was always the cute one of the family. Big brown eyes, always shared his desserts, thought Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy were secretly dating. When I was 16, he was diagnosed with cancer. "Your little brother has leukemia," the doctor had said, like he was reading a grocery list. Lucas was only 7. When I told our dad, he just sighed and asked me to pass him a beer. He was one of those parents that thinks putting food on the table and a roof over your children's heads is enough, and anything else is overkill. So we were practically on our own. If not for my best friend Sarah, that is. She was only a year older than me, but she felt more like a big sister. Glassy skin, color-coordinated outfit, very put together. She held me while I sobbed in the school bathroom. "We're going to help," she said, stroking my hair. "I promise, Mia. We're going to help." By the next week, she'd organized everything. Bake sales in the cafeteria, car washes every Saturday. She made these professional-looking flyers with Lucas's school picture, the one where he's missing his front teeth. "Help Lucas fight," in big letters across the top. "You don't have to do this," I told her, watching her stay up late designing social media posts. "Yes, I do. You're my best friend. Lucas is like my little brother too." Unfortunately, the GoFundMe exploded. Sarah had this gift for writing. She made Lucas sound brave but vulnerable, hopeful but in need. She posted updates after every doctor's visit, shared photos of him at chemo. Within 2 months, we'd raised $47,000. "This is incredible," my mom said, crying at her laptop. "We can actually afford the treatment at Children's Hospital now." Sarah handled everything, said it was easier that way, less stress on our family. She had the login, managed the withdrawals, gave my mom cash or checks when needed. I was too exhausted to question it. Between hospital runs and trying to keep up with school, I trusted her completely. Lucas finished treatment in May. His hair was growing back, fuzzy like a baby chick. We had a party in our backyard. Nothing fancy, just family and close friends. Sarah couldn't make it, had a family thing. That's when I saw her Instagram story by accident. She was at a car dealership posing with a white Honda Civic. The caption read, "Hard work pays off." Well, we both worked in Wingstop together, so this made no sense. A sense of dread filled my stomach. So the next day at school, I asked about her new car. "Oh yeah," she lit up. "I've been saving forever, working extra shifts, you know." Except I didn't know, because I helped the supervisor make the roster, and Sarah was never assigned in the morning. I didn't want to ask any more questions because of how much she had done for me and Lucas, but it was like a nagging question that wouldn't go away. So 3 weeks later, I finally managed to work up the courage to ask for the GoFundMe login. Sarah's face went through about 10 expressions before landing on offended. "You don't trust me? After everything I've done?" My face flushed with red, and I instantly regretted saying anything. "I just want to see the final numbers, for taxes." I quickly responded. She gave me the login. The withdrawal history made me dizzy. 23 transferred to Sarah's personal account, exactly half. When I confronted her in the parking lot, she didn't even deny it. Instead, she got angry. "Do you know how much work I put into this?" She actually looked angry. "I spent months organizing everything, creating content, managing donations. You stole from my brother's cancer fund." I cut her off. Her hand met my face. The slap wasn't hard, but it was enough to get the message across. As soon as she drove off, I posted every screenshot I could find about what had happened, and I put it in every Facebook, WhatsApp, and Snapchat group we were in. This was the same community that had donated thousands, all turning on Sarah, all because of me. The next day, I woke up to a knock at the door. It wasn't Sarah. It was CPS. The CPS worker stood at our doorstep with a clipboard and a stern expression. Behind her, another official-looking woman waited by a government sedan parked in our driveway. "We received a report of medical neglect and fundraising fraud," the first woman said, showing her badge. "We need to speak with you and your parents immediately." My hands started shaking. Mom appeared behind me in her bathrobe, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. "What's going on?" "Ma'am, we need to conduct an investigation. Is your husband home?" Dad stumbled out from the living room, still in yesterday's clothes. The CPS workers exchanged glances at the beer cans on the coffee table visible through the doorway. They separated us for questioning. I sat at the kitchen table across from the younger worker, while her partner took my parents to the living room. Through the doorway, I watched Mom's face crumble as they showed her documents. "Someone filed a report claiming your family misused the GoFundMe money," the worker explained, sliding papers across the table. "These bank statements show large cash withdrawals that don't match medical expenses." I stared at the papers. The numbers were all wrong. Withdrawals I'd never seen before, dates that didn't match Lucas's treatment schedule. "These aren't right," I said, my voice cracking. "Sarah handled the money, but she gave us receipts for everything. Do you have those receipts?" I ran to Mom's filing cabinet, but the folder marked Lucas Medical was nearly empty. Just a few pharmacy slips and one hospital bill. Where were the rest? The investigation moved fast. Within 3 days, they'd frozen what was left of the GoFundMe account. Lucas had to stay with Aunt Beth while they investigated. I watched them pack his dinosaur backpack, his little face confused as Mom tried to explain through tears. "Why can't I stay here?" he asked, clutching his stuffed T-Rex. "It's just for a little while, baby," Mom said, but her voice shook. I knew who'd done this. Sarah. It had to be her. But when I tried calling, her number was disconnected. Her Instagram was private now, and she'd blocked me on everything else. At school, whispers followed me through the halls. People who'd donated to Lucas's fund now looked at me like I was a thief. In the bathroom, I overheard 2 girls from my English class. "I heard they bought a new TV with the cancer money," one said. "Sarah told me she saw them at Best Buy last month," the other replied. "While that poor kid was in chemo, I burst out of the stall." "That's not true." They scattered, but the damage was spreading. Sarah had been busy. 2 weeks in, I started investigating on my own. First, I went to the bank where we'd cashed the checks Sarah gave us. The teller remembered me but couldn't provide information without a court order. However, she did mention something odd. "That girl who was always with you," she said quietly, glancing around. "Her mom works works here, in management. My stomach dropped. Sarah's mom was a bank manager? She'd never mentioned that. I spent hours going through our family computer, searching for any emails about the GoFundMe. Most were gone. But in the trash folder, buried deep, I found one from PayPal. A receipt for Lucas's medication, $3,200, dated 2 months ago. Why was it deleted? Then I remembered. Sarah had used our computer once when hers crashed. She'd needed to update the GoFundMe page. She must have had access to our email. I started reaching out to other families from the cancer support group online. 3 of them had strange stories about a girl named Sarah who'd contacted them, asking detailed questions about their fundraising efforts. One mom said Sarah had offered to help manage their campaign, but got angry when they declined. She knew so much about our situation, the woman told me over Facebook Messenger. It was creepy, like she'd studied us. Week 3 brought more trouble. The CPS workers returned with printed screenshots, Instagram posts showing our family at a restaurant, at the movies, shopping at Target, all while Lucas was supposedly too sick for school. These were taken during his treatment, the worker said. I looked closer. The photos were real, but the dates were wrong. That Target trip was from 2 years ago. I recognized my old haircut. The restaurant photo was from Lucas's birthday, before he got sick. Someone had reposted them with new captions and fake timestamps. Check the metadata, I begged. These are old photos. But they said that wasn't their job. They were just collecting evidence. Dad's drinking became their focus. Sarah had apparently submitted photos of beer bottles near Lucas's medication. I knew those pills. They were my birth control, kept in an old prescription bottle. But in the grainy photo, you couldn't read the label. One morning, I found Mom crying over her laptop. The hospital says we have unpaid bills, she said. But I know Sarah paid them. She showed me the confirmations. I called Children's Hospital myself. After an hour on hold, I reached the billing department. They had no record of several payments we thought we'd made. The confirmation numbers Sarah had given us didn't exist in their system. Wait, the billing clerk said. I show someone called last month asking about your account. A young woman said she was your sister. I didn't have a sister. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times Sarah had been alone in our house, helping with Lucas, bringing groceries, being the perfect friend. How many documents had she taken? How much had she sabotaged? I started keeping a notebook, writing down everything I remembered. Every date Sarah had handled money. Every time she'd been alone with our computer or files. The pattern was terrifying. Month 2 brought a new crisis. I was pulled from history class by the principal. In his office, 2 police officers waited with the school resource officer. We received a tip about substances in your locker, the principal said. My blood went cold. They walked me to my locker, made me open it in front of gathering students. Behind my textbooks, wrapped in plastic, were pills I'd never seen before. Those aren't mine, I said. But who would believe me? My family was already under investigation for fraud. The suspension was immediate. 3 days while they tested the pills and investigated. Mom had to leave work to pick me up, her face a mask of exhaustion and disbelief. I believe you, she said in the car. But baby, who's doing this to us? I knew, but I had no proof. Sarah had been too careful. At home that afternoon, while Mom made frantic phone calls to lawyers we couldn't afford, I noticed something odd. My bedroom window, the one I always kept locked, was slightly open. Nothing was missing, but things were. My diary was on the wrong shelf. My laptop was closed, but still warm. Sarah had a key. We'd exchanged them last year for emergencies. I'd forgotten until now. I changed the locks myself that night with a kit from Home Depot. Dad was too hammered to help, and Mom was at Aunt Beth's, visiting Lucas. As I worked, I thought about Sarah, how she'd volunteered to help with everything, how she'd insisted on handling the stress so we could focus on Lucas. She'd been planning this from the beginning. The substance test came back negative. They were prescription pills, but not narcotics, just blood pressure medication. Harmless, but enough to cause chaos. The suspension stuck though. Zero tolerance policy. During my forced time off, I played detective. I found Sarah's ex-best friend, Jamie, on Instagram. They'd had a falling out junior year. Jamie agreed to meet me at a Starbucks downtown. She's always been like this, Jamie said, nervously stirring her latte. In middle school, she made up this whole story about her sister having cancer, practiced crying and everything. When people found out she was an only child, she said it was her cousin. Why didn't anyone do anything? Her mom's connected, works at the bank, knows everyone. Sarah always gets away with stuff. Jamie gave me names of other people Sarah had burned. A pattern emerged. Sarah would befriend someone in crisis, help them. Then something would go wrong. Money would disappear. Rumors would start, but never enough proof to pin on her. By month 3, our life was in ruins. Lucas was still at Aunt Beth's. Dad had lost his job after missing too many shifts for CPS meetings. Mom looked 10 years older, and I was the girl who got suspended for substances. But I kept digging. I found deleted security footage from Wingstop showing Sarah's actual hours. I tracked down families from other states who'd encountered her online. I even found a Reddit post from 2 years ago warning about a teenage girl who infiltrated cancer support groups. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lucas's favorite nurse, Than, called me one evening. I probably shouldn't tell you this, he said, but that friend of yours, Sarah, she came by the hospital a lot when you weren't here. Asked weird questions about treatment costs, insurance procedures. I thought she was just curious, but looking back, he agreed to write a statement about Sarah's suspicious behavior. It wasn't much, but it was something. I created a timeline, cross-referencing everything. Sarah's new car purchase lined up perfectly with large withdrawals from the GoFundMe. Her mom's position at the bank explained the fake statements, the deleted emails, the planted evidence, the social media campaign. It all pointed back to her, but I needed her to admit it, and I had an idea. I created a fake Instagram account, posing as a mom with a sick daughter. I posted in the same support groups, used the same keywords that had attracted Sarah to us. Within a week, she messaged me. Her approach was identical. Sympathetic messages, offers to help, questions about fundraising. I played along, building trust. Meanwhile, I documented everything. The messages from Sarah to my fake account came faster than I expected. Within days, she was asking about treatment costs, insurance coverage, and whether we'd considered crowdfunding. I fed her false information about my fictional daughter's condition, making it sound sound desperate but manageable with the right funding. Meanwhile, the real investigation into our family continued. The CPS workers showed up twice more that week, each time with new evidence that Sarah had clearly manufactured. Photos of Dad passed out on the couch while Lucas laid nearby, except the timestamp showed a date when Lucas had been at school, perfectly healthy. Bank statements showing ATM withdrawals from locations we'd never visited, even a typed letter, supposedly from a concerned neighbor, describing neglect that never happened. I started sleeping with a chair propped against my bedroom door. The changed locks helped, but I knew Sarah had other ways. She'd been in our lives for years, knew our routines, our passwords, our secrets. Every morning I checked my backpack for planted evidence. Every afternoon I searched my room for anything out of place. The breakthrough with my fake account came when Sarah offered to help set up a GoFundMe. She sent detailed instructions, templates, even examples of successful campaigns she'd researched. I recognized the writing style immediately. It was identical to what she'd written for Lucas. I showed everything to Mom, who was barely holding it together. She'd been put on unpaid leave from work due to the ongoing investigation. Dad had given up entirely, spending his days in front of the TV with a growing collection of empty bottles. "We need to go to the police," Mom said, scrolling through the messages. But when we tried, we hit a wall. The detective assigned to our case seemed more interested in the fraud allegations against us than our evidence against Sarah. Her mother's connections ran deep. Every time we thought we were making progress, another obstacle appeared. Sarah escalated her fake account interactions. She wanted to meet my fictional family, offered to come to our home to help organize fundraising materials. I stalled, claiming my daughter was too sick for visitors. Sarah's messages became more insistent, almost aggressive. She needed to help, she said. It was her calling. Than, the nurse who'd noticed Sarah's strange behavior, called with more information. He'd been checking old visitor logs and found something disturbing. Sarah had visited the pediatric ward multiple times when Lucas wasn't even there. She'd told staff she was checking on other sick children, bringing them gifts. But several families had complained about a teenager asking invasive questions about their medical bills. I added this to my growing file of evidence. The notebook had become a binder, then multiple binders. I cross-referenced dates, highlighted patterns, created charts showing the money trail. It consumed my days while I was suspended from school. One afternoon, while organizing my evidence, I noticed something odd in an old photo from Lucas's treatment. In the background, barely visible, was Sarah talking to someone in the hospital billing office. The photo was dated 2 weeks before she'd told us about the payment issues that required large cash withdrawals. I zoomed in on my laptop, enhancing the image as much as possible. The person Sarah was talking to wore a hospital ID badge. The name was blurry, but I could make out enough letters to start searching the hospital's staff directory online. Her name was McCatherine, and according to LinkedIn, she was Sarah's cousin. The pieces clicked into place. Sarah had inside help at the hospital, someone who could manipulate billing records and create fake payment problems. I printed everything and added it to my evidence binder. That night, Sarah's messages to my fake account took a darker turn. She'd somehow figured out that my story didn't add up. The final message simply read, "I know who you are." My phone rang immediately. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "Really, Mia?" Sarah's voice was calm, almost amused. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? You always were terrible at creative writing. Delete the account, stop digging, or things will get worse for your family." I saved the voicemail and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. The next morning, Mom woke me up in tears. The CPS workers had called. They were moving forward with formal charges of medical neglect and fraud. We had a week to prepare our defense. I knew we needed legal help, but no lawyer would take our case without a retainer we couldn't afford. The public defender assigned to us seemed overwhelmed and uninterested. During our brief meeting, she suggested we consider a plea deal. "Plea deal for what?" I asked. "We didn't do anything wrong." She shuffled through papers without looking up. "Sometimes it's better to admit to lesser charges than risk worse ones." I walked out. That afternoon, I took a risk. I reached out to a journalist from our local paper who'd covered Lucas's story during his treatment. Her name was O'Catherine, and she'd always been fair in her reporting. I sent her everything: the evidence against Sarah, the connections to the bank and hospital, the pattern of targeting families with sick children. She called within an hour. "This is serious," she said, "but I need more than screenshots and theories. I need Sarah to admit something, or someone else to corroborate your story." I thought about the other families Sarah had targeted. Most hadn't wanted to talk, embarrassed about being scammed or afraid of getting involved. But one name kept coming up in my research: Benjamin's family. Benjamin had been in treatment at the same time as Lucas. His family had started a GoFundMe that mysteriously shut down after raising only a few $1,000s. When I finally reached his mother, she broke down crying. "That girl destroyed us," she said. "She offered to help, then somehow our campaign got reported for fraud. We never found out who did it, but Benjamin's treatment was delayed for months while we sorted out the mess." She agreed to write a statement for O'Catherine. Sarah must have sensed the walls closing in. Her attacks became more desperate. A brick through our living room window one night with a note, "Stop lying about me." Mom's car tires slashed while she was at the grocery store. Dad's AA sponsor called to say someone had been spreading rumors about him at meetings, but Sarah made a mistake. The security camera at the grocery store caught her near Mom's car. It wasn't enough for an arrest. She could claim coincidence, but O'Catherine added it to her growing story file. I went back to the other families from the support group, armed with Benjamin's mother's statement. Slowly, more began to open up. A pattern emerged that was bigger than just stolen money. Sarah had been studying these families for years, learning their vulnerabilities, perfecting her approach. One father, John, told me Sarah had contacted them before his daughter was even diagnosed. She said she was doing a school project on childhood illness, he explained, asked all these questions about insurance, medical costs, family support systems. 2 months later, when Lily got sick, she showed up offering to help. We thought it was such a coincidence. The fake account I'd created started receiving messages from other suspicious profiles. All of them had similar writing styles. All asked the same probing questions about fundraising and family finances. Sarah was running multiple scams simultaneously. I documented everything and and forwarded it to O'Catherine. She was building a comprehensive investigation, but needed one more piece: proof of where the money went. That proof came from an unexpected source. Jamie, Sarah's ex-best friend, called me one night, whispering urgently. "I'm at Sarah's house," she said. "Her mom's having a party. I snuck into the home office. You need to see this." She sent photos of bank statements, investment accounts, shopping receipts. The amounts matched the missing GoFundMe money perfectly. Designer clothes, jewelry, electronics, all purchased in the weeks after Lucas's fundraiser. But the most damning evidence was a notebook in Sarah's handwriting. Page after page of notes about different families, their weaknesses, their financial situations, their emotional triggers. Our family had 2 full pages. She'd written about dad's drinking, mom's guilt, my trusting nature. There were strategies for manipulation, timelines for escalation, even a section on exit strategies if caught. Jamie grabbed what she could before rejoining the party. The next day, she handed me a flash drive with everything she'd photographed. "I should have said something sooner," she admitted. "I knew what she was capable of, but I was scared of her mom." O'Catherine's article ran 3 days later. The headline read, "Local teen allegedly targets families of sick children in elaborate fraud scheme." The story detailed everything: the fake evidence against our family, the manipulated hospital records, the pattern of exploitation across multiple families. The response was immediate. Other victims came forward with their own stories. The hospital announced an internal investigation into McCatherine's actions. The bank put Sarah's mother on administrative leave pending review. But Sarah wasn't done. That night, she showed up at our house, pounding on the door at 2 a.m. "You ruined everything!" she screamed. "Do you know what you've done? My mom could lose her job. My college applications are destroyed." I called 911 while mom held the door shut. Dad, sober for once, stood guard with a baseball bat. Through the window, I could see Sarah's face twisted with rage, nothing like the composed friend who'd held me while I cried about Lucas. The police arrived just as Sarah was trying to break a window. They arrested her for attempted breaking and entering, vandalism, and making terroristic threats. As they led her away, she kept screaming about how we owed her, how she'd earned that money, how ungrateful we were. The next morning, CPS showed up again, but this time, they came with different news. In light of the newspaper investigation and Sarah's arrest, they were suspending their case against us pending review. The worker who'd been harshest with us actually apologized. "We have to follow up on every report," she said, "but it's clear now that we were manipulated." Lucas came home that afternoon. He'd grown 2 inches at Aunt Beth's house and wouldn't stop talking about her neighbor's puppies. He didn't understand why he'd had to leave or why he was back, but he was happy to be home. The criminal case against Sarah built slowly. More families came forward. The FBI got involved when they discovered she'd targeted families across state lines. Her mother was arrested for bank fraud and conspiracy. McCatherine lost her job and faced charges for falsifying hospital records. During the investigation, they found Sarah's laptop. The browsing history was a roadmap of her crimes. She'd researched each family extensively, joined private Facebook groups for parents of sick children, even taken online courses in fundraising and social media marketing. There were spreadsheets tracking which families were most vulnerable, which had the best insurance, which were most likely to trust a helpful teenager. Our family's page in her files was extensive. She'd documented every interaction, analyzed our weaknesses, planned her approach months in advance. There were notes about how to exploit my friendship, mom's desperation, dad's absence. She'd even researched Lucas's specific type of leukemia to make her fundraising appeals more effective. The trial took 8 months. Sarah's lawyer tried to paint her as a troubled teen who'd made mistakes. They brought up her parents' divorce, claimed she had abandonment issues, suggested she really had been trying to help but got in over her head. But the evidence was overwhelming. 12 families testified about their experiences. Bank records showed exactly where the money went. Her own notebook revealed the calculated nature of her crimes. The judge didn't buy the troubled teen defense. Sarah was tried as an adult for fraud, theft, conspiracy, and filing false reports. She got 5 years in prison, though she'd probably serve 3 with good behavior. Her mother got 7 years for her role in the scheme. The civil suits took longer to resolve. Insurance companies got involved, arguing about who was responsible for the stolen funds. Most families, including ours, eventually recovered about 60% of what was taken. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to pay off Lucas's remaining medical bills. The real recovery took even longer. Mom went back to work, but the stress had aged her. Dad actually got sober, saying the experience had been his rock bottom. He started attending AA meetings regularly, and even got a sponsor who wasn't connected to Sarah's rumors. I went back to school senior year to find everything had changed. Some people still whispered about the substance incident, but most were supportive. A few even apologized for believing Sarah's lies. I kept my head down, focused on grades, and tried to rebuild. Lucas thrived. His cancer stayed in remission. He joined Little League, made friends, forgot most of the trauma of that year. Sometimes he asked about Sarah, remembering only the nice girl who brought him toys during treatment. We told him she had to move away. I started volunteering with legitimate children's cancer charities, helping families navigate fundraising safely. I'd learned the hard way how vulnerable people in crisis could be. My experience, as painful as it was, could help protect others. One day, about a year after the trial, I ran into Jamie at the grocery store. She hugged me and apologized again for not warning me sooner about Sarah. "I keep thinking about all the families she hurt," Jamie said. "All the kids who suffered because their parents couldn't trust anyone to help after what she did." She was right. Sarah's crimes went beyond the money she stole. She'd broken the trust that allows communities to come together in crisis. She'd made it harder for genuinely sick children to get help. But she'd also revealed the strength of truth. When enough people stood up, when evidence mounted, when journalists did their jobs and systems eventually worked, justice was possible. It wasn't perfect or complete, but it was something. The last time I saw anything about Sarah was a news update about her appeal being denied. The photo showed her in an orange jumpsuit, her perfectly coordinated outfits a thing of the past. She looked smaller somehow, deflated without her web of lies to prop her up. I turned off the TV and went to pick up Lucas from practice. He was laughing with his teammates, grass stains on his his uniform, completely healthy and beautifully ordinary. That was the only update that really mattered. Our family had survived. We'd been tested, broken, investigated, and doubted, but we'd fought back with truth and evidence and the support of other families who'd been hurt. Sarah had tried to destroy us, but instead she'd revealed our strength. The GoFundMe platform implemented new verification procedures after our case made national news. They required more documentation, better oversight, clearer accountability. It wouldn't prevent all fraud, but it would make it harder for the next Sarah to prey on desperate families. I kept all my evidence binders, even after the trials ended. Sometimes I looked through them, remembering how helpless I'd felt when it all started, how Sarah had smiled while stealing from my baby brother's cancer fund, how she'd hugged me and called herself my sister while planning our destruction. But mostly, I focused on moving forward. College applications, part-time work, normal teenage things that had felt impossible during the investigation. I wrote my admissions essay about the experience, about learning to question trust while still believing in community support. I got into my first choice school with a partial scholarship. The admissions letter came the same week Sarah was officially sentenced. It felt like the universe offering balance. As one chapter of manipulation and lies closed, another of possibility and truth opened. Mom framed both letters, my acceptance and the newspaper article about Sarah's conviction. To remember, she said, that we can survive anything, and that truth wins in the end. Dad thought it was morbid, but I understood. We needed the reminder that we'd been targeted, gaslit, and nearly destroyed, but we'd fought back and won. Not through revenge or anger, but through patience and evidence and refusing to give up when everyone doubted us. Lucas never fully understood what had happened, and we kept it that way. He knew Sarah had done something bad with money meant to help sick kids, but we spared him the details of how calculated and cruel it had been. He had enough to deal with, being a cancer survivor. He didn't need to know how deeply we'd been betrayed by someone we'd trusted. The Wingstop where Sarah and I had worked together closed down 6 months after her arrest. Too much negative association, the manager told me. I found a new job at a bookstore, somewhere with no memories of Sarah counting her tips while planning which family to target next. Sometimes I wondered what made her the way she was. The prosecution had painted her as a sociopath, someone incapable of real empathy who saw others only as marks to exploit. But I remembered moments that seemed genuine. Her crying with me about Lucas, her excitement when the fundraiser hit certain milestones. Had it all been performance? Or was there something human buried under the manipulation? I decided it didn't matter. Whether Sarah was born without empathy or chose to suppress it for personal gain, the result was the same. She'd hurt dozens of families at their most vulnerable moments. She'd stolen money meant for dying children. She'd tried to destroy my family to cover her tracks. Understanding her motivations wouldn't undo the damage or bring back the innocence we'd lost. It wouldn't restore the faith and friendship that she'd shattered or erase the months of investigation and doubt. All I could do was learn from it and try to help others avoid the same trap. The charity work became my therapy. Every family I helped navigate fundraising safely felt like reclaiming something Sarah had tried to steal. Not just money, but the belief that people would help each other in crisis, that communities could come together for good. That trust, while fragile, was still worth offering. I developed presentations for support groups, teaching red flags to watch for and safe practices for accepting help. I showed them Sarah's notebook pages, redacted to protect families, so they could see how predators studied their victims. Knowledge was protection, and I had hard-won knowledge to share. The presentations grew bigger than I expected. Word spread through parent networks, and soon I was speaking to packed rooms at community centers. Each session started the same way. I'd hold up a photo of Lucas from his treatment days, then show Sarah's smiling face next to it. This was my best friend, I'd tell them. She organized our entire fundraiser. She also stole half the money. The gasps never got easier to hear, but the conversations afterward made it worthwhile. Parents approached me with their own suspicions, their own close calls. One mother showed me messages from someone who sounded exactly like Sarah. Different name, but same tactics. We reported it together. 3 months into my speaking circuit, I got an unexpected call. A woman named McCatherine introduced herself as a fraud investigator for GoFundMe. They wanted to hire me as a consultant, helping them identify suspicious campaigns before families got hurt. Your case changed everything for us, she explained. We need someone who understands how these predators operate. The job offer came with training, a decent salary, and the chance to work remotely while attending college. Mom cried when I told her. Dad actually smiled. A real one, not the bitter half grimace that had become his default expression. My first week on the job, I flagged 17 suspicious campaigns. The patterns were obvious once you knew what to look for. Vague medical details, emotional manipulation, urgent deadlines, handlers who insisted on managing everything. Each flag potentially saved a family from what we'd endured. Lucas started asking more questions as he got older. Why did Aunt Beth have those photos of him at her house? Why did kids at school sometimes whisper when they saw our family? We kept our answers simple but honest. Bad people sometimes hurt others for money. Good people help stop them. One afternoon, while reviewing campaign reports, a familiar name popped up. Benjamin's family had started a new fundraiser, this time for his little sister. My heart sank until I read further. They'd implemented every safety measure I taught. Multiple administrators, transparent accounting, regular updates with receipts. They'd learned from their pain. I approved their campaign immediately and sent a personal note of support. Benjamin's mother responded within hours, thanking me for everything. Her daughter's treatment was going well. The community had rallied without fear because they knew this campaign was legitimate. 6 months into the consulting work, GoFundMe flew me to their headquarters for advanced training. The other consultants were mostly former law enforcement or financial crimes specialists. I was the youngest by decades, the only one who'd been a victim rather than an investigator. During breaks, they peppered me with questions. How had Sarah gained such complete access? What signs had I missed? How did she maintain her cover for so long? I answered honestly, even when it meant admitting my own naivety. Teenagers don't expect their best friends to be criminal masterminds, I told them. That's what made her so effective. The training included reviewing active investigations, One case made my blood run cold. A teenager in Michigan, helping multiple families with sick children, handling all their fundraising. The parallels to Sarah were unmistakable. Same age, same approach, same insistence on control. I worked with local authorities to build a case. We discovered she'd already diverted thousands, though not as skillfully as Sarah. Her mother wasn't involved, which made the money trail easier to follow. Within weeks, 3 families had their funds recovered, and the girl was in custody. "You saved us," one father told me over the phone. We were about to give her complete access to everything. Each save felt like redemption, but the work took its toll. Reading desperate pleas from parents, seeing sick children's photos, knowing that predators were studying these same posts, it wore on me. Some nights I'd dream about Sarah, her calm voice explaining why she deserved the money she stole. Mom noticed the strain first. She found me at 3 a.m. one night, laptop open, reviewing campaigns with tears streaming down my face. A 4-year-old with brain cancer, his campaign showing all the warning signs of manipulation. "You can't save them all," she said, closing my laptop gently. "But I have to try," I whispered. She held me like I was 7 again, scared of thunderstorms. We sat there until sunrise, not talking, just being. The next day, she made me promise to set boundaries. Regular hours, mandatory breaks, therapy if needed. The therapy helped more than I expected. Dr. McJonathan specialized in trauma from financial crimes, apparently a growing field. He helped me understand that my hypervigilance, while useful for work, was also a trauma response. "You're trying to prevent every family from experiencing what yours did," he observed. "That's admirable, but impossible." We worked on balance. I could help without destroying myself. I could be effective without being obsessive. Slowly, I learned to step back when needed, to trust the systems we'd built, rather than personally investigating every suspicious campaign. A year into the job, I received a letter forwarded from the prison. Sarah's handwriting made my hands shake. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was short, formal. She was pursuing her GED, taking accounting classes, planning for release. She didn't apologize or mention our friendship. Instead, she wrote about understanding consequences and making better choices. It read like something drafted for a parole board. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. But I kept the letter, filed with all the other evidence. A reminder that even criminals could write pretty words that meant nothing. Lucas turned 10 that spring. His birthday party was everything we couldn't afford during his treatment. Bounce house, pizza party, 20 kids from school. He was the tallest in his class now. No trace of the fragile boy who'd clutched his dinosaur during chemo. During cake, he stood up with a prepared speech. He thanked everyone for coming, thanked Mom and Dad for the party. Then he looked at me. "And thanks to Mia for making sure I got better," he said. "She's the best sister ever." The other kids clapped politely, having no idea what he meant. But I knew. Somehow, despite our efforts to shield him, Lucas understood that I'd fought for him when he couldn't fight for himself. That night, I found him reading under his covers with a flashlight. The book was about kids who solved mysteries. He looked guilty when I caught him, like reading past bedtime was the worst crime imaginable. "I want to help people like you do," he admitted, "when I'm bigger." I tucked him in properly, kissing his forehead like I had when he was 5. "You already do," I told him, just by being okay. The next morning brought a new challenge at work. A campaign in Texas showed subtle red flags. Not enough for automatic suspension, but concerning. The fundraiser was for a teenager with lupus, organized by her older sister. Something about the writing style felt familiar. I dug deeper, cross-referencing social media profiles and previous campaigns. The sister had helped 3 other families in the past year, all successfully, but small details didn't add up. Photos showed different nail polish in posts supposedly made minutes apart. Location tags placed her in multiple cities simultaneously. I escalated the investigation. Within days, we'd uncovered a ring of scammers using stolen photos and fabricated stories. They'd refined Sarah's methods, working in groups to appear more legitimate. The Texas campaign was their latest attempt. The platform suspended all connected accounts and notified law enforcement. $47,000 was frozen before it could disappear. The real teenager in the photos was found safe in Portland, unaware her image was being used to steal from compassionate strangers. "How do you catch these things?" McCatherine asked during our weekly call. Our algorithms missed all the connections. The answer was simple but hard to explain. I recognized the hunger in the writing, the calculated emotional manipulation. Sarah had taught me to see it, though she'd never intended that lesson. As my reputation grew, other platforms reached out. I consulted for medical crowdfunding sites, church fundraising programs, even school PTAs worried about donation fraud. Each organization had its own vulnerabilities, its own Sarah-shaped holes in their defenses. I developed training materials, best practice guides, verification checklists, simple tools that could prevent devastating losses. One nonprofit estimated my protocols had saved families over $3 million in potential fraud in just 6 months. The week before starting college, I was invited to speak at a national conference on charity fraud. Standing before hundreds of professionals, I felt like that scared 16-year-old again. But then I saw a familiar face in the crowd. Oh, Catherine, the journalist who'd broken our story. She smiled and nodded encouragingly. I took a breath and began. "Fraud prevention isn't about technology or algorithms," I said. "It's about understanding how predators think and giving good people the tools to protect themselves." The presentation went better than expected. Afterward, a prosecutor from New York approached me about a case they were building. Similar pattern, larger scale. They needed someone who understood the psychology behind these crimes. I agreed to consult, but set firm boundaries. College came first. This work, important as it was, couldn't consume my entire life. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Move-in day arrived faster than expected. Mom insisted on driving me, the car packed with everything I'd need for dorm life. Dad came too, sober for over a year now, and determined to be present for milestones he'd missed. Lucas bounced in the back seat, excited to see a real college campus. He'd grown so much, not just physically, but emotionally. The little boy who'd been terrified of needles now volunteered at hospital read-aloud programs for kids in treatment. "You'll come home for Thanksgiving, right?" he asked for the 10th time. "Wouldn't miss it," I promised. confused. At the dorm, my roommate turned out to be a cheerful girl named Benjamin from California. While our parents awkwardly made small talk, she admired the framed newspaper article Mom insisted I hang. Wait, this is you? Benjamin's eyes widened. I followed this case. You're like famous for catching scammers. I laughed, explaining it wasn't quite that dramatic, but she peppered me with questions while we unpacked, genuinely interested in the work I did. It felt strange, but good to be known for something positive that came from something so painful. After my family left, Lucas hugging me 3 times, Mom crying, Dad gruffly telling me to be safe, I sat in my new room feeling the weight of change. Tomorrow would bring classes, new friends, a life beyond the shadow of Sarah's crimes. My laptop dinged with a work notification. Another suspicious campaign flagged by the system. For a moment, I considered logging in, starting the investigation process. Then I remembered Dr. McJonathan's words about balance. I closed the laptop. The campaign could wait until Monday. Tonight, I had a floor meeting to attend, new people to meet, a future to begin building. The work would always be there, but so would life beyond it. Walking to the common room, I passed a bulletin board covered in flyers for various causes, fundraisers for spring break missions, charity runs, donation drives, all legitimate as far as I could tell, but I made a mental note to offer fraud prevention workshops to student organizations. Old habits died hard, but they could be channeled productively. I could protect people while still living my own life. Sarah had taken enough from me. She wouldn't take this too. The floor meeting was typical college awkwardness, everyone trying to seem cool while secretly terrified. When we went around sharing interesting facts about ourselves, I simply said I worked in online safety. True enough without opening complicated conversations. Later, Benjamin and I grabbed dinner at the dining hall. She chattered about her major, pre-med, her boyfriend back home, long distance was hard, her fear of the infamous freshman 15. Normal concerns that felt refreshingly simple after years of fraud investigations and family crisis. So what's your major? She asked between bites of questionable cafeteria pizza. Criminal justice with a minor in social work, I replied. She nodded approvingly. Makes sense with your background. You'll be amazing at it. That night, I called home to check in. Lucas answered, excitedly telling me about making the junior soccer team. Mom took the phone next, assuring me everything was fine. Don't worry about them. Focus on school. Dad even got on briefly, his voice gruff with emotion as he told me he was proud. After hanging up, I sat at my new desk and opened my planner. Classes started tomorrow. Introduction to criminal justice, composition, statistics, psychology. A full load that would challenge me in different ways than the past 3 years had. My phone buzzed with a text from O'Catherine. Saw your conference talk online. Brilliant work. Keep changing the world, kid. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't in years. Pure possibility. The past would always be part of me. Sarah's betrayal, a scar that shaped but didn't define me. But the future stretched ahead, full of chances to learn, grow, and help others in ways I was still discovering. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be difficult classes, homesickness, the inevitable freshman mistakes, but there would also be growth, friendship, the chance to become more than just the girl whose best friend stole from her dying brother. I pulled out my statistics textbook, figuring I might as well get a head start. Numbers had become my allies in fraud detection, patterns that revealed truth beneath lies. Now they'd help me build a career in justice, one equation at a time. Somewhere out there, Sarah sat in a cell, maybe studying her own textbooks. Other predators planned their next schemes, studied their next victims. But also out there were families who'd avoided devastation because of protocols I'd helped create, children who received every dollar donated for their care. The work continued, would always continue. But tonight I was just another freshman, nervous about tomorrow's classes, excited about possibilities ahead. The girl who discovered her best friend's betrayal had grown into someone who prevented others from experiencing that pain. It wasn't the life I'd planned at 16, crying in a hospital waiting room, but it was mine, built from truth and resilience, and the determination to make something good from something terrible. Sarah had tried to destroy us with lies. We'd survived with truth. Now I helped others do the same, one family at a time.